People say fate is like a lion. No matter how far you run, it will track you by the scent of your fear. And in the land of Nyandoro, hidden between wide rivers and whispering forests, fate didn't knock. It kicked the door open. Let me tell you a tale so twisted, even the bravest griots speak of it with trembling tongues. This is not just a story of kings and queens. It's the tale of a daughter born beneath a cursed moon, destined to break the very heart that brought her into the world. The kingdom of Nyandoro sat atop red clay hills, bordered by the emerald green Mono forest and fed by the sacred waters of the Inkula River. Its people were proud, fierce warriors, skilled weavers, and keepers of ancient wisdom. Their ruler, King Tafari, was known across the southern lands as the leopard of the flame, merciless in battle, wise in council, and feared by those who dared to challenge him. By his side sat Queen Lethabo, daughter of the old priesthood, whose beauty was sung by traveling bards and whose voice could calm storms or raise them. They ruled in harmony, their palace rising from stone and ivory, carved with the stories of those who came before. But one thing eluded them, a child. For many years, the cradle by the queen's bed remained empty. Offerings were made. The high priests danced by firelight. Still, the womb remained silent. Then, as the year turned and the wind shifted, a sign appeared. A hawk flew through the palace garden and cried 3 times. The elders gasped. A child was coming. And so, on the 22nd night of Kasumba, the queen went into labor. The skies turned wild. Thunder cracked the bones of the heavens, and lightning danced across the rooftops. Inside the birthing chamber, Queen Lethabo screamed. Her fingers dug into lion-hide cushions, her voice rising above the storm outside. The air was thick with the smell of roasted herbs and burning palm oil. 2 birth women moved with practiced hands. By the door, the kingdom's mystic, the Isanusi, chanted low under his breath, calling on the ancestors. Outside, the people of Nyandoro gathered, their torches flickering in the storm winds. No one slept. This was the night their future would arrive. "Push, great one birth woman whispered. The queen screamed once more, and with a final cry, the child was born. A hush fell over the room. Then a wail, sharp, strong, defiant. Queen Lethabo collapsed into the bedding, tears of relief wetting her cheeks. King Tafari burst into the room, his royal cloak soaked in rain. He rushed forward, eyes gleaming with the fire of pride. But then ... silence. The Isanusi stared at the newborn as if he had seen death itself. His hands shook. His staff clattered to the floor. He whispered, more to the spirits than to the people, "This child will slay her mother and wed her father." The words sliced through the air like a poisoned blade. Gasps, screams. One birth woman dropped her calabash. Queen Lethabo, weak and dazed, tried to sit up. "What are you saying?" The Isanusi turned slowly. "The ancestors have spoken. If this girl draws breath into adulthood, blood will follow. The mother will fall by her hand, and the father shall make her his queen." King Tafari's joy vanished. He looked at the tiny infant, wrapped in barcloth, her eyes still shut. Queen Lethabo's voice cracked. "She must not live. We must stop this." Tafari's jaw tightened. This was his heir, his firstborn. Yet the prophecy burned into his chest like molten iron. "She must die," the queen whispered again, her hands trembling. But the king hesitated. I cannot," he murmured. "She is of my blood." "The spirits demand it," the Isanusi said, stepping closer. "Let her live, and your sorrow will be written across the stars." The queen's eyes pleaded, "If you love me, Tafari, end it now." And so, before the cock crowed, the Decision was made. The child, who they named Zalani, meaning stay in peace, would be removed forever. A loyal servant named Becca was summoned. He was tall, silent, and trusted like a blade at the king's hip. "Take her to the forest," the queen said, her voice a whisper. "To the deepest roots of Mono. Let no spirit find her." Becca nodded, eyes heavy. That night he wrapped the baby tightly, tucked a sacred coin into the cloth for the gods, and vanished into the dark. The Mono forest was thick and alive. Trees as old as time itself rose toward the sky. Owls called, leaves rustled with things unseen, but Becca walked on. The child remained silent, as if she knew. By moonlight, he reached the ancient shrine of Mirem, the forgotten goddess of rivers and lost souls. Ivy curled over cracked stone. An old drum lay split beside the altar. "I cannot do this," he whispered, eyes wet. "This child has done no wrong." He placed her on the stone slab, kissed her head, and whispered, "Mother of waters, take her. Keep her from the fate they fear." Then he turned and ran. The baby, who had been silent, calm as stone, suddenly let out a laugh-a-soft, melodious giggle that danced through the forest like the chiming of ancestral bells. The air around the ancient shrine of Mirem shimmered as if the trees themselves had taken a breath. Blue light erupted from the altar, washing over the infant like moonlight drawn from the heavens. Leaves trembled. The river nearby quieted. Even the insects stilled. Then, from the depths of the forest, a voice clear, womanly, powerful, whispered through the canopy, "She is mine now. She is mine now." And with that declaration, Zalani's destiny was sealed. Meanwhile, Becca ran. His sandals scraped the forest floor. Vines clawed at his robe, but he didn't look back. He had left behind more than a child. He had abandoned a curse, or perhaps a salvation. By sunrise, the people of Nyandoro heard the royal drums. The king stood before the villagers, his face solemn. "The queen's labor has ended," he announced, "but the gods have taken our child back into the spirit realm." Mourning began. Elders poured libations. The people lit fires to guide the baby's soul. But in truth, no grave held Zalani. No spirit had taken her. She was alive, hidden within the embrace of a goddess. 19 years passed. The whispers of that cursed birth vanished from memory. Queen Lethebo never again mentioned the daughter she once bore. King Tafari ruled with a grip of iron and fire. Nyandoro's people sang of war, of trade, of harvest, not of loss. But deep in the forbidden Wano forest, Zalani lived. The goddess Mirem had raised her not like a mortal, but like a secret. The girl grew strong, fed by spring water, guided by spirits, shielded by shadows. Her skin shone like polished teak, and her eyes held storms. She was faster than a hawk, quieter than a panther. She could climb trees as if she had wings, and wield a spear as if born with it. But her dreams were not her own. Every night, visions wrapped around her mind like vines. She saw a palace white stone, golden banners, a throne carved with lion heads, a man with a crown, staring not in hatred, but with something deeper, darker. She awoke gasping, heart pounding. "Why do I see what I do not know?" she asked the river. But no answer came. One evening, as the sun melted into the river and birds sang the closing hymns of day, Zalani stood at the riverbank, scrubbing her hands clean of wild berries. That's when the silence broke. Hoofbeats, heavy, urgent. She turned just as a horse burst through the trees. A young warrior slumped over its back, his shoulders soaked in blood. The horse reared and bucked him off. He landed at her feet. She stood frozen. His breath was shallow. His lips trembled. "Help me," he whispered, and fainted, Zolani stared at him. Outsiders were not welcome here. The forest was sacred. She had been taught to fear them, to avoid them. But something within her stirred. Not fear, recognition. The feeling of turning a page in a story you'd read before. She dragged him to her hut, using vines as rope. She cleaned his wound with crushed herbs and river clay. She boiled bark for fever. She sat by his side as night fell. By moonrise, his eyes fluttered open. "Where am I?" He mumbled. "You are safe," she answered softly. His name was Masego, a warrior from a village named Nyandoro, the very name that haunted Zolani's dreams. "I was ambushed," he said. "They were hunting. Not animals. A person. Maybe me. Maybe someone else." He looked at her again, and this time his expression shifted. You look like someone I've seen before." Her stomach nodded. "You're mistaken." "Maybe," he said. "But I owe you my life. Come to Nyandoro. Let us thank you properly." Zolani froze. That name, Nyandoro, her pulse, roared in her ears. That was the place from her visions, the palace, the throne, the crowned man. "I will come," she whispered. 2 days later, she stepped beyond the trees for the first time in her life. The path to Nyandoro was lined with dusty red soil and thorny trees. Zolani walked in silence, her eyes devouring every bird, every rock, every human being like she was walking through a dream. As they approached the village, her heart twisted. The smells of roasted plantain and smoked fish, the songs of market, women, the laughter of children. It was all foreign, and yet it pulled at her soul. Then she saw it, the palace, white stone, gold trim, tall gates carved with stories. Her knees almost gave out. "I've seen this before," she murmured. Masego looked at her. "You've been to Nyandoro?" She shook her head. "No, but I've seen it in dreams." They reached the gate. Masego smiled. "Wait here. I'll call the guards." He vanished through the gate. Zolani stood alone. Her hands shook. A strange energy buzzed in the air. She could feel the palace breathing, as if it recognized her. Then a voice boomed beyond the gate. "Who is this girl you bring to me?" It was a voice that vibrated through her bones, deep, stern, familiar. The gates opened. There he stood, King Tafari. Zolani's vision blurred. Her mouth went dry. She had never seen him. Yet her spirit trembled. Her body remembered what her mind did not. He stepped forward, his gaze locked with hers. His brow furrowed. "You look familiar," he said. King Tafari's gaze remained locked onto Zolani's eyes as if the moment itself refused to let go. He tilted his head slightly, like a man listening for the echo of a memory. Something about her stirred the dust in his mind, an image half lost to time. She looked ... familiar, unsettlingly so, but he couldn't place it. He blinked, forced the thought aside. "You," he said at last, voice barely more than a breath. "What is your name?" Zolani dropped into a respectful bow. "I am Zolani, my king." He repeated the name under his breath, then nodded. "Zolan. A fine name. My son tells me you saved his life. You have the gratitude of the royal house. Please, come inside. My family would like to thank you properly." And just like that, the girl who had been cast into the wild was now stepping into the palace of the very man who had ordered her death. Inside the queen's chambers, Queen Lethabo sat brushing her hair before a bronze mirror. Her movements were slow, methodical. Then a sharp knock. Moments later, a guard entered, out of breath. "My queen ... a stranger has been brought to the palace." She raised an eyebrow. "And? It's a young woman. She looks like you, my queen." The brush slipped from her hand. Repeat that, she said, rising. The guard hesitated, then repeated, She resembles you. Almost ... exactly. Without another word, Lethibo swept out of her chamber and marched toward the throne room. Her mind raced. Her breath caught in her throat. When she stepped into the room and saw the girl standing beside King Tafari, she stopped cold. Her blood ran icy. It was like looking into a mirror 20 years younger. The girl's face, her eyes, her very expression, Lethibo's knees buckled. No, it couldn't be. But it was. She had buried that child, hadn't she? She composed herself, drew a shaky breath, and approached with a practiced smile. Who is this? The king turned to her. His face was calm, unreadable. This is Alani, the young woman who saved our son's life. Where did you find her? She asked, keeping her voice even. In the forest. Masajo was wounded. On his return from a hunt, she rescued him. Ithabo's eyes turned to the girl's Alani. Their gazes met. A strange silence settled between them. Zalani's spine tingled. This woman, this queen. She was afraid. But of what? Of her? That night, Queen Lethibo retreated to her chambers and sent for the Isanusi. The old mystic arrived slowly, bones creaking, robe trailing like smoke. You summoned me, my queen? There is a girl in this palace, she said. She looks like me. She could be the child we cast out. The Isanusi's eyes widened. That's impossible, he said hoarsely. The gods don't make such mistakes. But if she lived, if somehow she survived, then the prophecy would be set in motion, he finished. She gripped the edge of her chair. We cannot take that risk. I want her gone. Gone forever. The Isanusi said nothing. But his silence was not agreement. It was fear. Because deep down, he knew. It was already too late. Elsewhere in the palace, King Tafari sat alone in his chambers. He could not sleep. The candles burned low. He poured himself a drink, but his hands trembled. His mind could not let go of her. Solani, something about her unraveled the seams of his order. He had seen 1,000 strangers pass through his gates, yet none had shaken him like this. When she had bowed before him, his chest tightened. When she spoke, his skin tingled. Who was she? Why did she feel so known? Then came his wife's voice. She must go. He looked up. Queen Lethibo stood in the doorway, arms folded. Her eyes blazed. Who? He asked, though he already knew. The girl, she said. She's dangerous. Why do you say that? Because I know, she snapped. Tafari studied her face. The queen of Nyandoro was not a woman who feared shadows, yet tonight she shook. She stays, he said quietly. Queen Lethibo flinched. You don't understand. I understand enough, he interrupted, his voice now edged with fire. My word is law. She is our guest, and she stays. The queen's shoulders sank, her eyes wide with dread. She had seen this stubborn resolve before in war councils, in political decisions, and now in something far more dangerous. She saw not just defiance in her husband's stance, but a frightening protectiveness. And that terrified her. In her bones, Lethibo knew. This girl's Alani was the same child she had ordered killed 19 years ago. The gods had not erased her. They had preserved her. The prophecy had begun to stir. She could not wait. That night, cloaked in silence, Queen Lethibo summoned her most trusted handmaker, the same guard she had once tasked with taking the infant Alani into the forest. He arrived with hesitant steps, the memory of that night still haunting his conscience. You told me you had done it, she hissed, pacing before him. I thought I had, Becca stammered. But when I saw her, I knew I had failed. Her glare could cut stone. That failure may cost me everything. You will fix it, tonight." He bowed his head, guilt and fear written across his face. "As you command, my queen." She stepped close, her voice low and poisonous. "No one must know. This time, make sure the girl disappears forever." Meanwhile, Salani had been offered a modest chamber overlooking the royal gardens. It was peaceful, warm, and quiet, but her spirit could find no rest. A strange unease clawed at her chest. Sleep came slowly, and just as her breath began to steady, she heard it a faint creak. A door gently nudging open. Her eyes snapped wide. Instinct surged. A figure crept through the shadows. Before thought could catch up, Salani rolled from the bed just as a blade slashed into the pillow. Feathers burst into the air like startled birds. She sprang to her feet, her body already in motion. The intruder lunged. She ducked, twisted, and struck his knee. The man groaned and collapsed, weapon skidding across the floor. Moonlight poured through the lattice window, illuminating his face. Salani gasped. "A palace guard." "Who sent you?" She shouted, fury blooming in her chest. The guard Becca gritted his teeth. "You don't belong here." Salani's heart pounded. She had faced panthers in the forest, outwitted spirits of the river, survived alone for years. But never had she been hunted by a fellow human. Why? She didn't even know him. And in that moment, a bitter truth struck her. She was not welcome here. But she had a choice: flee or stand her ground. Outside, King Tafari stood on the veranda of his chamber, staring out at the gardens. Sleep eluded him. The night carried. Too many questions, then a scream. He rushed down the corridor, heart racing, guards trailing behind. As they neared the guest quarters, a bloodied Beka stumbled into the moonlight, his face twisted in pain. Behind him stood Zalani, panting, her hands streaked with blood, her eyes blazing. "What happened here?" Tafari barked. The queen appeared moments later, breathless. "What is this?" She cried. Beka dropped to his knees, voice strained. "She attacked me." Zalani said nothing. She did not plead. She did not cry. She only stared at the king, waiting. Tafari turned to her, his voice low but sharp. "Is this true?" Still, she didn't speak. Then he turned to the guards. "Take him," he ordered, pointing to Beka. He tried to kill her. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. The queen stepped forward, her voice trembling with false urgency. "You can't be serious. She could have killed him." But Tafari's eyes burned like coals. He drew first blood. "My decision stands." The guards obeyed. As Beka was dragged away, Salani met the queen's eyes. And in that quiet gaze, Queen Lethabo saw something more frightening than prophecy. She saw power. The queen turned away, her face pale. She had not just lost control of the situation. She had lost her husband's trust. And worse, she had failed. To eliminate the girl, Salani had not just survived. She had conquered. There was something in her of fire that outshone the sunlit bravado of seasoned warriors. King Tafari, known for his calculating nature, saw what others refused to admit. Salani possessed a strength both raw and radiant. It stirred something in him, and so he did what no ruler of Nyandoro had ever dared. He appointed a woman Zalani as one of his war leaders. The announcement caused a storm. Veterans scoffed. Nobles grumbled. The warrior class bristled at the idea of a girl from the forest leading them into battle. But one campaign after another, Zalani silenced them all. She led with precision like wind, navigating thorn bushes, quiet yet unstoppable. She struck with the swiftness of a hawk and the cunning of a jackal. Her victories piled up like stones at a sacred altar. Soon, the people of Nyandoro began whispering her name like a prayer. Songs bloomed in the market squares tales of the fierce maiden who fought like a lioness and bowed to none. King Tafari, ever watching, grew fonder of her with each passing day. He praised her in open court, consulted her in private, and mentioned her name with the kind of admiration that clung to the edge of affection. And Queen Lethibo saw it all. With every cheer that welcomed Zelani through the palace gates, bloodied but victorious, Lethibo felt her power eroding. She had once been the only name in the king's heart. Now she was a shadow beside the light that Zelani cast. She had pleaded, warned, even begged the girl to leave. But Zelani, ever calm, had simply said, "This is my home now. I will not leave." The queen's envy twisted into fear. The prophecy was unfolding before her. Zelani had become too loved, too powerful. If she stayed, she would not only win the king's heart, she would fulfill the ancient curse. So Lethibo went once more to the Isanusi. "You must help me," she whispered desperately. "We must make her leave, before it's too late." The old seer stared into the distance, his voice hollow. "It is already too late. The gods have begun their work. Interference will only bring ruin." Lethibo's fists trembled. "Then, tell me what I can do." "I am sorry, my queen," the Isanusi murmured. "They are watching. If you strike at her, they will strike back." And yet, when Lethibo saw her husband watching Zelani with eyes that once belonged to her alone, she knew words would not stop this. She had one chance left. She arranged one final ambush. That evening, she sent a servant to lure Zelani into the garden. A guard, masked and cloaked, waited in the shadows with orders to end the girl's life quickly and quietly. The queen herself, veiled and hidden, watched from behind the trees. But Zelani's instincts, honed by years in the wild, flared like fire. As the assassin lunged, she twisted and countered. The fight spilled into the main courtyard. Steel clashed. Voices rose. Chaos erupted. Hearing the noise, King Tafari bolted from his chamber. Zelani, blinded by instinct and the rush of battle, turned just as another figure approached. She swung her blade. Too late, she realized it. It was Queen Lethibo. The blade caught her side. Blood spilled onto the garden stones. The queen staggered and collapsed. Zelani froze. Her sword slipped from her fingers. Behind her, the king cried out and ran to his wife, catching her in his arms. Lethibo's mouth moved, words drowned by blood. Her fingers clawed weakly at the king's robe, but whatever she wanted to say, she could not. She died with it, buried in her throat. The palace fell into mourning. Zelani was devastated. For all the hatred between them, she had never wished the queen dead. It had happened too fast, in the confusion of war and betrayal. Guilt wrapped around her like chains. She expected wrath banishment, maybe death, but no punishment came. The elders ruled it an accident. The king said nothing. He disappeared into his chamber and spoke to no one. For weeks, Tafari withdrew from his duties. Council meetings were postponed, letters unread. The kingdom moved forward, but its heart lay still in mourning. Weeks after Queen Lethibo's burial, when the kingdom of Nyandoro was still cloaked in solemnity, a threat emerged from beyond the eastern hills. A ruthless king from the highland domain of Dambara sent a chilling message: surrender or be conquered. King Tafari, still draped in sorrow, tried to delay. But Dambara's answer came in the form of soldiers. War broke loose. Many of Nyandoro's finest warriors rode out to meet the enemy, and many never returned. Then came the challenge. The king of Dambara sent a final decree. Let your strongest face mine. If your champion defeats my chosen warrior, the war ends. If not, Nyandoro becomes mine. It was a cruel offer, But one King Tefari could not refuse. His people were dying, his lands bleeding. So he summoned every able warrior to the palace courtyard. Whoever defeats this enemy shall have lands, wealth, and a place of highest honor beside me, Tefari declared. Warriors stepped forward, proud and fierce. But one by one, they fell. Then Zolani stood. "I will fight him," she said, her voice cutting through the silence. Tefari hesitated. This was no ordinary duel. But deep within, he knew if anyone could face this storm, it was her. He gave her his blessing. The duel was held at dawn, on the blood-soaked field between the villages. The Gambran warrior was massive, cloaked in scars and pride. His strikes were thunder, his defense a fortress. But Zolani moved like wind and flame. The clash echoed. For what felt like days blade against blade, breath against death. She faltered once, then twice, but she rose every time, her spirit unbroken. Then, in one final, perfect moment, she drove her spear deep into his chest. He fell, and with him, the war. She had won. Zolani returned to Nyandoro bathed in glory. Crowds wept. Drums thundered. Elders bowed. King Tefari stood at the palace. Gates, pride swelling in his heart. That night, he held a feast in her honor. Songs filled the halls. Wine flowed like river water. But as the stars wheeled above them, the king retreated to his chamber with a question burning in his soul. He could no longer deny it. He wanted Zolani not only as his general ... but as his queen. A few days later, the council of elders gathered. The throne must have balance, they told him. A king without a queen weakens the kingdom. Tefari listened quietly. Then he spoke. There is only one woman worthy. A hush blanketed the room. I will marry Zolani. Shock rippled through the palace and into the streets. Some whispered of tradition, others of prophecy. But no voice rose high enough to challenge the king. Zolani, when told, stood speechless. She had fought beasts and men, storms and betrayal, but never had she imagined this. Still, she agreed. On the day of the wedding, the kingdom gathered in robes of crimson and gold. The drums called the ancestors. The air trembled with chants. Zolani walked through the gates of the palace in a robe of river silk and lions. Fur, her face unreadable, her heart uncertain. At the altar stood Tefari, not just as king, but as a man caught in fate's great net. They joined hands. And with the council's blessing and the roar of the people, the two were wed. But the gods said nothing. Because they had already spoken long ago, destiny had won, the prophecy fulfilled. This story is a haunting reminder that fate is not something we escape by running. It is the road we carve with every step. The queen tried to resist it and walked straight into it. And sometimes, the thing we fear most is the thing we are meant to become. If this tale stirred your spirit, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful African legends and epic folktales. Tap the bell so you never miss a story that echoes through time.